Diana and Michael met when they were both in their last year of college. That year was difficult, but they managed to build a strong and trusting relationship. After graduation, they got married, started living together, and just recently celebrated 7 years of marriage. Michael's career went up quite quickly, which could not be said about Diana. She was unlucky with her bosses, then with the company itself. Her own impulse to move up in her career faded with time. When Michael was already on the leadership position, his wife was in the ranks of ordinary employees and received not so much. So the husband took on the role of the family's primary breadwinner. Last summer, in the midst of vacations, Diana and Michael were going to go to the sea. The option not to go there was no. The wife was very persuaded by the husband, as she was very tired at work at that time because of the increased workload. And in general, they have not been going anywhere for a long time. The couple had been putting money aside for a vacation since the beginning of the year, and all their dreams were only about a long-awaited vacation. But life gave them an unpleasant surprise. When they were about to take a trip, their prices skyrocketed, and so that the accumulated funds were not enough. Of course, they could have taken out a loan, but the couple had agreed at the start of their relationship that they would not go into debt under any circumstances. Their only hope was the next vacation. Michael took on extra work in order to save the necessary amount of money as quickly as possible, to buy a trip in advance, and to do his wife a favor. Everything worked out just as Michael had planned. The wife was happy, and they finally left to rest. They loved the hotel. The staff were very friendly. They relaxed on the first day. The couple spent a couple of days exploring the area and walked to the beach. One evening, they began to talk about that it would be good to go on an excursion. "I'll get to the bottom of this," Diana said, and left the room. She went downstairs to the front desk to inquire about excursions for guests. She had seen some brochures at the desk, but did not immediately think of taking them. While she was perusing the colorful pictures and occasionally asking the receptionist questions, a man she did not know approached the desk. "I recommend this boat trip." A pleasant, low voice sounded, and Diana looked at him bewitched. "Have you been?" the woman asked. "Tell me." She herself did not expect to be so interested, and not in the walk, but rather in this particular interlocutor. At that moment, the administrator received a phone call. He apologized and went to make an emergency call. The two got to talking. The man's name was Peter. He had been vacationing here for about a week and had already visited everything he could. The nose of such a pretty companion, I could do the same again, he smiled. Diana was unexpectedly pleased by this flirtation on the part of such an attractive man, and she decided not to say anything about her husband. After talking for a few more minutes and taking the advertising brochure, the woman apologized to her new acquaintance and said she had to go. When she went up to her room, her husband asked, "Where did she stay so long?" The wife lied, saying she had been waiting a long time for the receptionist. She didn't say a word about Peter. A couple of days later, late at night, the couple were strolling by the sea. It was already quite chilly, and Diana was walking, tangled in her blouse. "Let's reminisce about our youth," Michael said cheerfully and began to undress. "What are you up to?" Diana looked at her husband disapprovingly. "Let's go swimming." "Do you remember our first summer swimming under the moon?" said her husband, standing knee-deep in water and extending his arm as if inviting her to follow him. Diana shivered with cold and said she'd better stay on the shore. "You will get sick," she muttered to her husband, but he was already paddling over the water surface. While he was swimming in all sorts of calls to join her, she just a strained smile, and she herself was mentally far away. She kept thinking of Peter and the way he had looked at her the first time she had met him. Several times at breakfast she saw him again. He sat at Michael calm alone, and at the sight of Diana in the company of her husband, there was no disappointment on his face. He was still smiling and never taking his eyes off her. The next morning, Diana's words came true. Her husband woke up sick. He decided it would be better for him to rest in his room for a couple of days, and he actively drove his wife out of the room so that she too would not get infected. "Go on a boat trip. There's no need to breathe my Vasily here," said the husband, and started coughing. On the one hand, she felt sorry for her spouse because he was sick for a few days of well-deserved rest. But on the other hand, Diana saw a good opportunity to continue acquaintance by taking an interest in her neighbor. As she made her way down to the first floor with these thoughts, the woman came face to face with Peter. It was as if he was already waiting for her here. After the greeting, there was a short pause. It was as if Stas was waiting for Diana to do something. The woman looked up at him. "You know, let's go somewhere. I had a lot of free time now," she said, and he smiled. The man rented a car and drove Diana around all day to beautiful places. They dined at an expensive restaurant, where the companion didn't hesitate to hold her hand while they waited for their meal. At that moment, Diana, though she pulled her hand away embarrassedly, was beginning to enjoy this game. Toward evening, as the beautiful setting sun illuminated the sea and the nearby houses and trees, the man stopped the car near the cliff, which offered a wonderful view. They got out, stood by the hood, and admired the sunset. There was no one around. Imperceptibly, the man ran his arm around Diana's waist and turned his companion toward him, pulling her ever so slightly closer. "I have dreamed of this moment since the first day I saw you," he said, and smiled softly. "Interesting," said Diana, just to fill the pause. She herself was already aware that the man wanted to kiss her. It frightened her. But at the same time, she couldn't wait to fall into Peter's arms. She was so drawn to him. He leaned toward her slowly. His eyes were greedily fixed on her lips. She had plenty of time to push the man away, but she didn't. Instead, Diana herself reached for him like a magnet. They kissed passionately, and a moment later the man's hands were stretching her dress. By this point, Diana was no longer resisting what was happening even mentally. That night, she returned to her husband's room as if nothing had happened. "How was the tour?" Michael asked her and smiled. "Fine, I liked it," answered his wife, remembering how she had really spent her time. "I feel better already. The pills have helped, so we will be together on our next trips," the husband said as he hugged his beloved. It was impossible to say that Diana was happy about this news. In her mind, she had already made plans for how she and Peter would once again sneak away from everyone and spend time just the two of them. Her newfound lover was in no hurry to sever their bond either. So they agreed that Diana would come to him at night when her husband was already asleep. Michael always slept very soundly, so she was not afraid of waking him up with any rustling noise. They tried to do everything unnoticed by others. But that night someone did see them. On another of their midnight escapes, Diana met another neighbor in the hallway who saw her tentatively knocking on her room, and Peter opened the door for her. The neighbor politely said hello, but Peter only sharply slammed the door. The unexpected witness's name was Patrick. He had just arrived here and had not had time to get to know anyone yet. He assumed that the couple he had seen the night before had come here to rest together, and his thoughts were only confirmed. The next afternoon from his room balcony, he saw Diana and Peter standing by the pool and talking, trying to take cover behind a large beach umbrella. Before they kissed, they both looked around for some reason, as if hiding from prying eyes. Then they both went their separate ways. Patrick looked at the lounge chair next to the couple. He saw that the phone had been left on the chaise longue. It was too late to call for the owner, since everyone had already left. So the man decided to go down to the pool himself and return the thing left behind. He could not remember the number of the room where the couple were staying. He was too tired that night and did not think he needed to pay attention to the signs. He didn't know their names either. But he got lucky with another one. The woman had her picture on the screensaver on her phone, so describing her wasn't a problem. He asked the receptionist for her room number and explained the situation. Going up to the right door, Patrick knocked. The door was opened for some reason not by the man he had seen with Sveta. The neighbor was even a little taken aback. He had thought she was resting with someone else. By the confusion, by the face of the woman herself, who appeared next to her real spouse. It was clear that she, too, had not expected to see midnight this witness her betrayal. When she saw the phone in the hands of an unexpected guest, she somehow joked absurdly about how absent-minded she was, thanked her for the phone, and hurriedly closed the door. Patrick spent a long time trying to figure out what had just happened. At night, and for some time during the day, she spends time with one and tries to be inconspicuous. She was living with another man altogether. I think he's just uncovered another cheater. Another, because he himself had recently broken up with a woman with whom he had been together for several years, and the breakup was very unpleasant. Particularly because Patrick found out that she had been going out with others until the last moment. He hadn't even expected that the whole situation with his hotel roommates, whom he would probably never see again in his life, would take over his thoughts so much. Finally, he got so tired of this endless contemplation that he decided to talk to Michael himself. Unbeknownst to Diana, he caught him at the communal breakfast and told him everything he knew and saw. Of course, Michael did not believe him at once. Then Patrick gave him one piece of advice to set his alarm clock in the middle of the night and see if his wife was around, since she thinks it's okay to go out at night to someone else. I hope you understand what is really going on. Good luck with that. With those words, Patrick left for his and Michael's. Now it was time for my husband to act. He was, of course, very uncomfortable even to allow the idea that Diana might not be faithful to him. But why would some neighbor suddenly say such a thing about her? So there really was a reason for it. He did as Patrick had advised him, setting the alarm clock for the time when he should have been sound asleep by now. But there was no sleep that night. Diana kept asking him if he was going to go to bed. Time after time, these endless questions added fuel to the fire. She was nervous, which meant she might indeed have plans for the night. Then Michael lay down and pretended to be asleep already. After a while, he heard Diana pack up and leave the room. That night, the whole hotel must have been up in arms. A scandal broke out on the second floor. Michael followed Sveta to find out who it was that she went to at night and gave them a truly unforgettable evening, after which the lover wore sunglasses for a long time, even indoors. The next morning, their vacation was forced to come to an end. Diana had no chance to coax forgiveness for this behavior, so she simply watched in silence as her whole life crumbled. Michael filed for divorce as soon as they were already in town. The unfaithful wife was only allowed to get her things from the apartment and leave as quickly as possible. The woman still tried to get in touch with her lover for a long time, but he left her message unanswered. Normally, he had his own family, which he did not want to ruin because of some resort romance. Diana was less fortunate in this situation. She was now divorced. She had to look for a new apartment and somehow make a living on her meager salary. It could not be otherwise. You have to pay for everything in life. So that's the story. Share in the comments. What do you think about this situation and the behavior of the characters? And thanks for listening to the story to the end.